We're going to circle back to the budget now with a closer look at the numbers. Patrick Orecki is an expert on the state budget from the Citizens Budget Commission, or at least I think you're an expert. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we see this increase in the financials in all funds. And when we say all funds, we're talking about state funding, federal funding, all the money that's in the pot, increasing from 220 in last year's budget to 229 in this year's budget. $9 billion is a lot of money, but out of $229 billion, kind of a small fraction of that pie. Is that an average increase, the $9 billion that we've seen?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit bigger than average. Usually the all funds growth will be 4 or 5%, so that's pretty much right in that exact range. There's a lot going on in the financial plan, kind of puts and takes right now, though, with a lot of federal money that's been around since COVID, response money, and new spending coming in. So there are a lot of puts and takes. That's
interesting, because I remember in last year's state budget, the big thing was we have all of this federal money. It's going to run out. We got to use it. But we're still increasing spending this year. Do we still have a lot of federal money to use, or that could be coming in the future?
Yeah, there's probably not more coming in the future, essentially, but there is still money, especially from the American Rescue Plan, the state and local fiscal relief. The state got about $13 billion of that to use over a 4-year period. So we're actually still using that. There's still a little bit, in fact, in fiscal year 2025 for that as well.
And I remember when we were talking last year, and then in last year's budget too, when they passed last year's budget, the governor made a big deal about it being a neutral budget. What would I say? It wouldn't have a deficit in 4 or 5 out years, I think. Is that the case still in this year's budget? I don't know if they'd even looked that far, I guess.
Yeah, it is not the case. The short answer is no. So last year when the budget passed, it was kind of incredible that we had 5 years worth of budget balance over the life of the state's financial plan. I don't think that's ever happened since financial plans started. So it was kind of incredible. That was really short-lived. In fact, it was over the summer last year that the state said, you know what, the tax receipts don't look as good as we originally thought over the coming years, so gaps opened up in July last year.
Okay, so that's a situation that was created since the last budget.
Yes.
And that's tax receipts as in, like, they're thinking less income taxes? What's the shortage of revenue that they're expecting, I guess?
Yeah, the biggest piece of the pie is personal income taxes for New York State. So that is the single largest source of state-generated revenue in the budget.
Yeah.
It can be very, very volatile, especially because New York State has a very kind of progressive personal income tax code. Movements at the top income brackets and in capital gains can cause pretty big shifts in the overall kind of receipts forecast.
And I would assume that's probably the hesitancy in the Hochul administration of raising taxes on high income earners this year. I know that's part of it, and you probably have the number of, I think it's like the top 1% of earners generates the top 50% of revenue or income tax. Am I making these numbers up?
No,
I could just be making these numbers up.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yes, they're essentially the top 1% of personal income tax filers funds about $1 in $5 that the state spends from state operating funds overall. So it's a huge amount of money that comes from a relatively small number of taxpayers, which means that you can get, again, big swings in those numbers year to year.
And I know that you're still looking through the budget, so it's okay if you don't know this, but I think something that a lot of people will be wondering is, are there any new costs for me in this budget? You know, like, we're not raising income taxes on anybody in this year's budget, but there are sometimes some kind of like hidden fees in places of the budget. Do we know if we should expect any new costs for New Yorkers with this?
Yeah, I think there are 2 sort of big things that we would call attention to. One is an increase in the payroll mobility tax, specifically within New York City. So that's a tax that already exists. The state is just increasing rates in New York City on employers based on their payrolls to generate new recurring revenue for the MTA specifically. Yeah. The other thing is not a tax policy action by the state, but sort of a cost shift from the state onto local governments. So local governments pitch in several $1 billion for the Medicaid program every year. State is changing. There's a pretty complicated mechanism, but the nuts and bolts is shifting about $700 million in costs from the state onto counties in New York City.
Do we know why, in terms of the shift of it? Does the state have a reason to be doing this, or is it kind of just, we want the money?
I think that's really the primary reason, is that it shows up on the state's books as about $700 million in savings. State doesn't have a big savings plan in this budget or in most budgets, so this is a big area where decreasing their own spending opens up opportunities to spend elsewhere, but it does mean that that cost just has to be picked up at the local level.
Yeah, let's talk about the spending, the expense side of this budget. When we talk about the budget, I think looking at it in a big picture kind of way is really important because some people may think $229 billion, it's going towards a lot of things. As I mentioned at the start of the show, it's really in two big buckets, I think, education, healthcare. Is that still the case in this budget? I would assume it is, but.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's schools and Medicaid primarily?
Yes, Medicaid being the single largest thing. So that is over the next few years getting upwards of $100 billion total between the state and federal funds. So that's the single biggest program. And then school aid is number two right behind it. Between those two things, that's more than half the budget alone.
And the Medicaid growth, is that kind of average this year compared to previous years? I know that's obviously a big part of the budget. So I think when it grows, people pay a lot of attention to it because if I don't know, the legislature or the governor or the Department of Health is doing something that would increase the cost, I think that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah, there is significant growth there for a couple of reasons. First of all, is policy actions taken, the state increasing reimbursement rates, especially for hospitals. We also have significant costs in the long-term care space. That's always been growing pretty quickly. One thing that's happening, though, in the Medicaid program specifically is that there was over 1 million people that enrolled in Medicaid during COVID because of federal rule changes that allowed people to stay on the program longer. Over the next year or so, those people are going to start to shift out because those COVID provisions ended. So again, there are kind of puts and takes, but there is still significant growth in Medicaid.
So as those people come off, the cost should, I don't think significantly, but would go down a little bit for the state?
Yeah, it is fairly significant. I mean, we're talking about 1 million people moving out of the program, and the average cost of these individuals is probably $10,000 to $12,000 a year. So everyone who moves out of the program, the state is reducing Medicaid spending by that much. They're moving into other programs, some of them into public programs, some of them into private coverage. We
have about a minute left. Just beyond those healthcare and education buckets, is there any other spending actions here that seem out of the norm or something that the public might be interested in knowing about? This is a very big piece, 10 pieces of legislation, so there's a lot to go through.
Yeah, sort of the biggest fiscal question mark outside of those big buckets was what the state would do about the MTA. So the MTA is in a really difficult fiscal position right now. It has been for years, but really exacerbated by COVID driving ridership down significantly. So we knew there was going to be some state support for the MTA. Turns out that the package that they came to is this about $1 billion in recurring revenue from the payroll mobility tax that I mentioned earlier, and a few other sources of funding too to try to get the MTA back to long-term balance.
It's a huge issue, especially for people in New York City and the metro area, but we're out of time. Patrick Orecki from the Citizens Budget Commission, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this week's New York Now. Have a great week and be well.